once. If you're live.
All right.
Yeah. So I think okay, you're live now.
Hi, everyone. We're going to start the webinar soon. We're just like trying to see if anyone else is going to join in. We just wait another minute. And thank you for joining us today.
And who are you?
Oh, okay. We'll do that. Do you want to start?
Well, I go by many names. TJ, my friends call me TJ. Jane Thirikwa, or Wathaya. I'm an Atlas Corps fellow from Nairobi, Kenya. We are currently serving at the Human Rights Campaign. I'm really excited about today's webinar and looking forward to responses and possibly questions. I've had an interesting couple of months with some of the fellows coming to me and asking me if we could talk a little bit more about LGBT rights issues in the different countries and what we do. So this has been, this was really nice that Atlas Corps let us do this webinar.
And my name is Lushar. I work with LGBTQ young people in India. And I'm also an Atlas Corps fellow, class 13, just like TJ. And we both serving at the Human Rights Campaign with the Global Engagement Program. And just like TJ said, it's been really interesting because for a lot of Atlas Corps fellows, it gave them an opportunity to understand LGBT rights issues by meeting us personally and to get to know what exactly goes on in our side of the world as well as across the world when it comes to LGBT rights and the respect that is given to the LGBT community. And I really think that this is a great opportunity for you to ask as many questions as you want to, and it's a continuous engagement. You can come up to us directly and ask whatever questions, because I really believe that you have to be honest. You have to just be upfront and ask us. We will not take anything offensively. We're here to answer all the questions and the doubts that you've ever had about the LGBT community, about what's going on, about us personally also, and we'd really be happy to do that.
Yeah, so we wanted to begin the webinar by telling you a little bit about the work that we do, or a little bit about personal stories that make us do what we do. And I joined activism, LGBT activism, about 5 years ago. Mainly because my background is in communications and PR, and I've worked in the media, and I used to host a talk show, a 4-hour talk show, and during the show we would talk about social issues. People would call in and we would have guests, and we would talk about everything and nothing sometimes, but when I started talking about social issues in Kenya and what was happening in terms of human rights and accountability for the government, there had been a spike in issues of arbitrary arrests. The elections were right around the corner, and the politicians were using LGBT issues or homosexuality and what they call gayism, which is not even a term. And we noticed that there was a spike in LGBT-related violence. I also noted that there was a lot of misinformation. People were not really sure about what LGBT issues were. People had been fed myths. There was a lot of wrong information out there, and these are just stories that have been passed on by our friends, our parents, talking about issues of religion and whatnot, and Africanness, and the whole shebang. So I thought that if I use my resources and my work as a journalist, I could help bring the issues to the public for public discussion, so that then people are able to talk about it. Then I could share information. People would get out of the depths of this misinformation and probably look at LGBT rights issues in a different perspective. So this is one of the reasons that made me join LGBT activism.
And my story is similar and slightly different because every country has its own status of like how they perceive the LGBT community. It goes from really amazing and equality and respect to stoning to death and killing and brutal murders. India is pretty okay that way. Social acceptance isn't that great, but there's more or less a tolerance. I came out when I was 19, and I found that there wasn't a lot of support for young people who were just coming out. And by coming out, I mean saying openly that they're gay or they're lesbian or they do not fit the straight, the heterosexual mainstream idea. And for me, coming out was really important because it made me like start speaking the truth. I didn't want to lie anymore. I wanted to live a life of truth, that I wanted to be truthful to myself. But it was really difficult, and I realized that there are lots of young people who do not get that kind of support. And I started with a few friends. We started Queer Campus, which is the first LGBT, which is lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer organization, which was dedicated to young people so that they had a safe space. They could come and they could discuss, they could talk about their own issues, because young people's issues are really different from other people's. And I've been working with LGBT rights for about 4 or 5 years now, and I've constantly tried to get more into understanding social acceptance. The last campaign that I did was to engage straight heterosexual people who are accepting of LGBT people and to get their messages out. So it was a video campaign that I did. At this point, I will shift the discussion to a little bit about why we decided to do this webinar this month. It happens to be LGBT Pride Month, and the reason is that in 1969 in New York City, sometime this month, the anniversary is coming up soon. It's the last week of June. At this club called the Stonewall Inn, which is New York City, there was a police raid, and LGBT people, lesbian, gay, bisexual people, trans people were beaten up, and they were getting arrested, because back then in the United States it used to be, it was okay, but it was not okay, and there was this public misconception about LGBT people, and that led to a lot of backlash, physical, violent backlash, in what were called the Stonewall riots, which is probably in the history of the modern LGBT rights movement the first time there was an actual clash for their own identity, their own respect. And so internationally now, June is marked as Pride Month, to take pride in your identity, to take pride in who you are, to be open and to be out and proud about you. And that also marks the month when a lot of countries actually have their Pride marches. DC actually had its Pride March on 7th, and I'm really glad to say that a lot of Atlas Core fellows joined in. If you check the pictures, and you can see all the amazing fun pictures. But the whole sense of us having this conversation this month is because, of course, we are commemorating Pride Month, as well as to give people a better understanding. I sent across a list of definitions and terms. If you're not watching this live, you can check that list out in the attachment that Eunice had sent in the beginning. And I just wanted to briefly touch upon a few very basic definitions for some of you who don't even know what LGBT means. And it's perfectly fine. And you can always ask questions at the end of the webinar about any of the terms that you're confused about. I will start off with, I'll just share. So, and so LGBTIQ, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex, and queer. That is one of the terms. If it can be used as LGBT, LGBTIQ, but this is the term that you'll hear all the time whenever you're talking about people of different sexual orientations and gender identities. Now, what is sexual orientation or gender identity and expression? Sexual orientation is who you get physically, mentally, emotionally attracted to, which means that if a man is attracted to a woman, that person is heterosexual. If a man is attracted to a man, or a woman is attracted to a woman, that person is called homosexual, or in terms of like, if it's just men, then that person is gay. If it's women, those people are called lesbians. And if a person is attracted to both genders, which is a man being attracted to a man and a woman, or a woman being attracted to both men and women, that person is called as bisexual. So that's the lesbian, gay, bisexual part, which is about sexual orientation. Gender identity is something which is generally people think gender is male or female, but we're here to correct that particular notion. It doesn't matter what sex you were born in. You might have the body parts of a man, but deep inside your brain, your identity, you feel like a woman. That is your gender identity. Your gender identity is not about the parts that you were born with. That's your sex. Your gender identity is a state of being, a state of internal understanding of who you identify as. If you identify as a man, but you're in a woman's body, or you identify as a woman, but who's in a man's body, or you identify as gender queer, which means that you identify as neither gender. You feel that you're somewhere on that spectrum, because, and I will reiterate this, human sexuality, human gender identity is not male, female, straight, or gay. It's a continuous spectrum, and everyone is somewhere on that. So that's gender identity, and people whose gender identity is different from the way that they feel, like, I mean, it's different from what parts they were born with, are called transgender. So if a man, like if a person who feels like a man deep inside but was born with the female genital parts, that person is called a transgender person. Intersex is really intriguing, and a lot of my South Asian friends will understand this. Intersex is a person who was, because of genetic mutations, was born with body parts of both sexes, or
They're ambiguous.
they're ambiguous, yeah. They're ambiguous. That person is called intersex, someone who you cannot 100% classify as male in terms of sex or female in terms of sex. And queer, which I really love that word, which about 10, 20 years ago meant different in a wrong notation, but that word has been reclaimed because queer means anything that is not the heterosexual norm. Something that does not identify as, like, being just heterosexual and, man, woman type. Queer is an inclusive word which includes everyone, and everyone who does not identify as heterosexual or they don't identify in the same gender that they were born in. So it's an umbrella term. It basically combines all these identities together. And the last thing that I'm going to touch upon is coming out. And coming out is being true to yourself and telling people who you feel like. If you're gay, you're lesbian, you're bisexual, you're transgender, you feel queer, telling someone and owning up to your identity and being proud in who you are. That is called coming out. At the same time, there's something called homophobia, transphobia, and biphobia, which, as the word suggests, is, I wouldn't say a fear, but I would say that dislike of homosexuals or bisexuals or transgender people. And we'll be touching upon this kind of hate in a while when TJ just starts telling us about the state of LGBT rights across the world.
Okay, I wanted to go through the compelling need of why we talk about LGBT issues and LGBT rights. Currently, 83 countries in the world criminalize or consider same-sex conduct a crime with varying degrees of punishment. And these penalties, they range between anywhere from 3 months to 14 years to life imprisonment, and in almost 7 countries to death. And what we have seen lately is that some of the countries have started going backwards in terms of LGBT rights and these criminal laws. We have seen lately countries like Uganda and Nigeria and Russia and India, which recriminalize homosexual conduct in December of last year. And then we have now Brunei, which just passed Sharia law that says that dictates the punishment for homosexual conduct is death by stoning. So we are saying that these countries are moving backwards, and countries like the Uganda and Nigeria, they already have criminal law. So the legislators are just adding on to the already existing law. And then because of this notion of LGBT people being criminalized, then this creates an atmosphere for them to be easy targets for all sorts of violence. We have seen LGBT people who have been killed and jailed and fined and extorted. We have seen people who are expelled from schools, from homes, from their jobs. Even like in the US, there's still about 33 states where someone can be legally fired because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. And the violence, unfortunately, has been reported a lot in South America, in Africa, in countries like Uganda and Cameroon, in Jamaica. Mob justice, where people, mobs just gather around somebody who's either gay or perceived to be gay or transgender, and they're beaten up sometimes to death. And like I said, in the 6 countries, this includes Somalia, Mauritania, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, some parts of Nigeria. The northern parts of Nigeria subscribe to Sharia law as well. And Sharia law subscribes punishment for same-sex conduct to death. So what we see here is countries that criminalize same-sex conduct are seen to sponsor this kind of homophobia, because then people justify the violence by saying that the country already criminalizes these individuals, so it's justified for them to be killed or to be jailed or to be blackmailed, and this perpetrates the impunity that a lot of people violate LGBT individuals. In countries like South Africa and a lot of southern states as well, there has been a target towards the lesbians, particularly the ones who look a little bit masculine, who are judged because of how they dress, and there have been cases of corrective rape. Corrective rape is a term that is used when perpetrators of rape claim that they do that act because they want to correct somebody, they want to cure somebody. So a lot of the corrective rape cases have been reported, and the victims say that the rapists say, we raped you because we want to cure you of your being lesbian, we want to cure you of being homosexual. And the rape cases are not just towards the women, the transgender women as well, and some gay men also have gone through incidences of rape. I put in a map there about the laws as they stand around the world. This is a collective information from ILGA, the International Lesbian, Gay and Gay Association, and it just highlights in different colors the places in the world where same-sex conduct is criminalized, where same-sex conduct isn't, in terms of equality, the equality index of if some places have marriage equality while others do not. And as you can see, most of Africa actually criminalizes same-sex conduct. Most of the countries in Africa criminalize same-sex conduct. 38 out of the 54 countries in Africa criminalize same-sex conduct. And then in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia and Iran also have the death penalty. And then there's a growing trend of backward trend in Eastern Europe. Russia and some of the former Soviet Union states are introducing law that is coined to discriminate against LGBT people, and they're calling these laws propaganda against promotion of law that promotion of law that is against traditional values. So we have seen like Russia, Ukraine, there was a bit to introduce a similar law, and this is a trend that is growing. And right after the Uganda and Nigeria passed additional law, this kind of swept around Africa as well, with some legislators threatening to introduce similar law in Kenya, in Ethiopia, in the Congo, and sometime in Malawi as well. Cameroon records the highest number of arrests of LGBT people based on just suspicion of them being gay. We had a case of 2 men who were imprisoned for 5 years because the judge felt that they were dressed too effeminately and they were drinking Baileys, which is a liquor that is mostly associated to women. And that is the evidence that the conviction was based on that. And that is exactly what the judge said. But in most of these countries, the law actually criminalizes the act. So if somebody was to be arrested, they would have to be caught in the act. Yet in all of these countries, a lot of the constitutions protect privacy and freedoms of individuals. So if you were to break into somebody's house, you would be infringing on their constitutional right of privacy, because then you would have to catch them in the act. So sometimes even when the police arrest these people, they are unable to take the cases forward because they cannot prove that these people are actually having gay sex. So you find that, you know, they have slapped on charges of drunk and disorderly, indecency. The cases drag on, and some people are in prison for years and years, and the cases drag on and on.
And I will add to that that a lot of this police harassment also has to deal with like extortion. So even if the law does not clearly say that, you know, you can be arrested because you're gay, but says that you can be arrested because you were engaged in same-sex conduct, this law is used by police in a lot of countries to harass people, to even molest people. The amount of violence that is perpetrated, which is state-sponsored because of such harmful laws, has clearly been seen in a lot of sub-Saharan African countries, in India, in Russia, where the propaganda law gave people a chance to just go attack clubs, attack people, and gave people in the streets, like regular citizens, a good excuse to go and attack LGBT people. There are people who are getting, like, there was this case in Russia where a person, once he came out to his friends, they beat him to death, and then they took a stone and crushed his head with that. So the amount of horrific violence that exists is it's really, really bad.
So to put this a little bit in context of why we do what we do in terms of advocating for LGBT rights issues, and I would like to say that when we talk about LGBT rights, we don't mean that states and countries should create special rights for LGBT people. Rather, that states should give LGBT people the same rights as the rest of the citizens, instead of segregating them and treating them like second-class citizens. And we talk about state-sponsored homophobia because in these legal systems, they seem to condone criminalization of LGBT conduct. And I've already talked about the violence and arbitrary arrests and imprisonment. And when a lot of organizations and LGBT persons report these cases, we see that a lot of the perpetrators are never arrested. The police never follow up with investigations because even the police themselves do not understand this law. And then we have also seen a wave of export of hate and homophobia, primarily by American Christian evangelists who are coming into new breeding grounds like Africa and Eastern Europe. These American evangelists have actually lost relevance in the US. So, you know, they're coming with the outdated information, outdated researches, and they're meeting up with legislators, they're meeting up with Christian organizations in these countries, and actually asking that these states criminalize LGBT persons further. And the accusations have been as bizarre as saying that if you go ahead and talk about and give LGBT people their rights, then the world is going to end because people are not going to procreate, that, you know, gay people are responsible for the Holocaust, that gay people are responsible for the drought in these countries, that gay people are responsible for the lack of rainfall and for the hunger, and for all the broken marriages in these countries. And unfortunately, this information is being given to sometimes illiterate people, information that is being given to people who do not understand, homosexual people, people who do not understand what LGBT issues are. And unfortunately, this export of hate has led to the formation and creation of further law criminalizing LGBT people, as it was in Uganda, in Russia, and Nigeria.
Also, I can interrupt real quickly. Yes. Look, it seems like our slides aren't showing, even though they're showing on our computer. Hang on, let me just... Okay.
They are.
I don't know. Okay, let's see if that works. I'll get back on the Google Hangout and see if we're on the right slide right now, okay?
Okay. So I put in, and I think we can also share the PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, also the PowerPoint is on the webinar briefing that Eunice sent out like a week or two ago.
Yeah.
Okay, it does look like we're on the context slide on...
Okay.
On the Hangout.
Right.
Try going to the next slide.
Okay. I will.
Okay. What we might want to try to do is not go into presenter view and just stick with this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. We're still good?
Can everyone see it now? Like, yeah, that should be good. So, yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys, but you can follow along with the PowerPoint that was sent out earlier.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about all of the bad. I'd put up some pictures there of some issues where the press, some gutter press and tabloids have printed the pictures and addresses and names of suspected gay people in Uganda, putting them in danger. And actually this led to the brutal murder of one of the prominent Ugandan LGBT activists called David Keto. One of the pictures on the top right. And then there was also a picture that was released of some 2 Iranian men who were being hanged in public on suspicion of having a same-sex relationship. And this just puts into context, you know, the violence and the perpetrators, even though they're pictures, people take pictures. In Russia, like, gay men are being lured by so-called potential dates, and when they show up for those dates, then, you know, they're violated, they're raped, their hair is cut off, they're fed urine, and, you know, made to do horrible things, and all of this is recorded, and then these groups are then putting those videos out on social media.
You can even like if you even do a simple Google search, you will be able to find those videos. It is being propagated everywhere, and it seems like that gives people an excuse to just go on and do it because the government says, well, it is perfectly fine.
Yeah. So a little bit of the progress that has been done already. A lot of the countries now are looking into issues of LGBT rights, and some countries have instituted law recognizing that LGBT violence is a hate crime. So previously, when people would report this violence and the crime, the police would, they had no place to place it, because then they would talk about sexual violence, and then activists and civil society movements and organizations then asked the states to recognize this violence as a hate crime, punishable as a hate crime. There's also been growing visibility of LGBTQ movements. A lot of the people now having the courage to come out. One of the questions I keep getting from people, they keep asking, I mean, why do you come out anyway? Why don't you just keep it to yourself? And I say that the LGBT rights movement is just like any one of those social rights movements. When you back people into a corner, they will definitely fight back. And then there's strength in numbers as well. So a lot of people now are coming out and talking about their issues and asking for recognition and protection from the state as is supposed to be. There has been a lot of progress on issues of that gender and intersex rights. The international community is now coming together and calling out LGBT violence. Countries are being asked to respect human rights treaties. There are countries that are signatories to the UN and whatnot. There has been some constitutional reviews in some countries, and there has been also repeal of some of the law that criminalize punitive sanctions against consensual same-sex conduct.
Okay, so how does this affect us? How does it affect anyone? One of the things that TJ and I are doing with the Global Engagement Program at the HRC is that we're focusing a lot on research around the status of LGBT rights across the world, as well as calling out Americans who are exporting hate, as TJ told you about. We also do a lot of advocacy to build good relationships with NGOs and other key players who are influential in the LGBT rights movement and literally the international development sector, because development, LGBT rights, democracy, democratic initiatives, all of these go hand in hand, and you cannot say that a country is a proper democracy unless each and every citizen's rights are guaranteed. The HRC has been great in terms of getting fellows, and the next batch of Atlas Core fellows is going to come there in September, and they're going to continue the good work, and we will continue with assisting them with the partnerships once we go back, and there's a lot more work that needs to be done. And it's great to see that we really have a great chance to be able to interact with donors, to be able to interact with policymakers who are actually causing changes, bring about change through their position in the United States Senate, as well as in terms of international diplomacy. How does it affect you? All you Atlas Core fellows, you work in all kinds of fields, and you must be thinking, okay, you know what, this is great, this is awesome, how does it affect me? How do I do something about it? Well, the first thing that you need to understand is that LGBT rights, sexual orientation, gender identity, all of this has been over-sexualized. When people think about LGBT rights, they think about how people are having sex, but it is not that conversation. It is about basic human rights. It's about respect. It's about dignity for every citizen. It's about the right to privacy for everyone. And it's also about who you love. So there are rights and then there are obligations, because every state is supposed to provide equality, respect, and dignity to each of its citizens. And aren't we all, fighting for the same at the end of the day? Some of you might be working for women's rights, some of you are working towards the right to education, some of you are working to the right to free speech. all of these rights make up a democracy, make up a country, and these are important. And you cannot exclude a particular section just because you or the government or the society has these old age, outdated thoughts about who you are supposed to love, who you are supposed to live with. Your involvement is really important. First of all, come up to us, talk to us, ask us questions, get those thoughts clear. I know a lot of you come from countries where there is no space to have such kind of talk. And a lot of you might have a lot of questions about what exactly is the LGBT community. Why do people discriminate? We're here to help you understand all of that. We're here to help you understand every single thing about how you can even go back, probably create a safe space.
Yeah.
Talk within your friend circle, talk within your activist circle about equal rights for everyone. Someone has to spark up that discussion, and I'm pretty sure that your colleagues, your friends back home, there must be other people who think the same way and are just waiting for one person to take the first step. And that person could be you.
I know. If I could add very quickly, we have like some fellows who are working on the health sector, people who are working on issues of HIV and AIDS, where the entire world is moving towards zero. But then we have punitive law in some of the countries that make people, afraid to even go to a healthcare center. So some people don't know about their HIV status. They're afraid that if they go to the hospitals and talk about their sexual partners, like the doctors might out them and they may be arrested. So we are talking entirely, if you're talking about a country that is developing policy towards eliminating HIV and AIDS, and yet leaving out one particular community because then there's punitive law behind it, then we cannot talk about an entire move towards zero when we leave out particular organizations.
And I will say that it is up to us, fellows who are actually from the more difficult countries, to provide that kind of safe space to our own friends to start those discussions, because someone really has to start that. In these countries, the biggest problem is that not many people get to know about it because of social perspectives, because how society thinks about this issue. It is so taboo. No one will ever talk about it. And it is really important for us to start engaging in this, whether it be within your community, whether it be in your organization, to start having these talks soon. Another reason why I say that LGBT rights are relevant to you is that it is not separate from other civil rights. It is not separate from your movements. There is power in coalitions. A lot of people ask me that, oh, it is perfectly fine for us to fight for women's rights, but in my country, LGBT rights are completely taboo. How do I do that? Do understand that every single country has LGBT people. And all of these people, they're different levels of their how visible they are. So there are people who are just looking for other partners, other coalition partners, to be a bit stronger. The kind of place that I come from, there's a lot of HIV/AIDS work, but there's not any openly LGBT work. We build coalitions with women's rights organizations. We build coalitions with youth rights organizations, because at the end of the day, all our aims are the same: to have equality, respect, and dignity for everyone, to guarantee that everyone gets the rights that have been promised to us by the government, to go and to create a better civil society, to be able to have those conversations openly, to protect the freedom of expression. We would be more than happy to just like help you out with that process. At this point of time, I am going to introduce a really simple, fun activity. Let me just see if it's showing up on your screen. Yes, it is. Perfect. If you remember, in the first email that Yuna sent out, there was this, the genderbread person, which was sent out to you. And I would say that I hope some of you read what it said. I hope some of you understood. Even if you did not, I'm here to help you out with that. It's a hands-on activity, so I really hope that you have a pen and this printout in your hands. So the basic understanding of humanity and humans is that everyone is equal, irrespective of the standard definitions of race, caste, creed, country, immigration status, sex, gender. But we want to include gender identity, sexual orientation, and expression in that, and also prompt people to think of gender as a fluid spectrum, as sexuality as a fluid spectrum. No one is 100% like adhering to one particular gender. It is when we start thinking about binaries of man, woman, male, female, masculine, effeminate, gay, straight, that's when the problem starts. For all those people who do not adhere to that, people are ostracized, people are thought of as vile people, as perverts, and a lot of stuff. So here I'm going to talk about every person has an identity, your gender identity, what you identify as. And your gender identity could be anywhere from non-gendered going towards like how much of a woman you feel like or how much of a man you feel like. And you could, as opposed to what is popular belief, you could identify a little bit towards the woman's side and a lot towards the man's side, or identify as both also. It's the way you feel inside. And I would really suggest everyone to, if you could mark how much of like a woman you feel like from deep inside, or how much of a man you feel like from deep inside, and it could be both. Similarly, there's something called gender expression, which is behaving masculine in a masculine way or a feminine way, or liking men's clothes or women's clothes, or liking a particular color that is supposed to be only for women or supposed to be only for men, or like, you know, the way you dress, the way you talk, the way you like to be, the way you like to behave. And that could be completely irrespective of gender. It could be agender, it could be a little bit feminine and more masculine, or a little bit masculine and more feminine, or it could be alternating at both times, and it's perfectly okay for you to be anywhere on that spectrum. Then there's, as I said, there's sex, which is your body parts. And again, not everyone is born with perfectly male body parts or perfectly female body parts, and you could be somewhere in between also. So that's your biological sex. And then comes your sexual orientation and your romantic orientation. You could be sexually attracted to men or women or both, and you could also be romantically attracted to men, women, or both.
Or none.
Or none, which is called asexual. Mm-hmm. It's not important for people to always be attracted to one particular gender or the other. It could be anything. So my basic attempt with this activity is that if you could fill this out yourself, like, you know, just for your own understanding and reflection, everything is included here. If you're watching it later, just check out the handout and just take a printout and figure it out for yourself.
Okay, and then we wanted to share a very quick video. I think it's about 3 minutes. This was a video that was done by the UN during this year's Idaho, the International Day Against Homophobia and Transphobia. And I've also included a link to Equality Rising, which is one of the projects that we were working on at HRC. And it talks about LGBT issues last year in 2013. It's just a very brief overview of what happened around the world. So,
do you have the link to the video?
Wait. Yeah. 1 second. Current slide. Let's try this. Oh. We're not getting this. Oh wait. Okay, let's open this up in YouTube probably.
Oh, and if you have any questions, you're free to do that now.
We will just do that. Okay, Chrome. It's supposed to be what's that? All right.
And why don't you type that link in the chat section too?
Let's see if we have one.
And I'm just going to share the link with everyone in case the technology is not working for you. Just check it in the chat section, which is, oh, I think that should be it.
Okay.
Or maybe not.
And yeah, it's fine. And then if you go to screen share, then you can screen share the YouTube tab.
It's the second video. Just check that. And I'm going to screen share.
Yeah, that one. I'm just going to repost the link. How about everyone just watch the...
Okay. I think that you're not able to hear what, like, the video is not working for you.
So you can watch it later, actually.
Yeah, do watch it. It's a great video. It will also, like, tie up to why we talked about this with all you guys and how you can be a part of starting this discussion, to start sharing, to start, talking about LGBT rights issues. And let's move on to questions and answers. Let's see. Okay. Okay. There's a question from Darren. Does HRC have some projects in China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan?
No, HRC doesn't have any of projects in those countries. So this is a new department. It just started in September of last year, the Global Engagement Program. So what they're looking into right now is setting up partnerships with organizations and individuals around the world. And the department is still growing. My bosses are looking into getting a partnership coordinator. So if you know somebody who is up for the job, you can ask them to look at the advert and apply. So because HRC is based in the US, what then it's doing with in terms of global LGBT issues is adding its voice and using its resources to work with the LGBT organizations and individuals outside of the US. In terms of policy work, HRC is able to ask Senator Kerry to do a statement or call out a government that is abusing LGBT persons in the different countries. So I don't know, maybe it's a project or something that they will look into in the future.
Yeah.
But for right now, no. But then it has a very great network with LGBT organizations and individuals in different parts of the world.
Any other questions? You can just go to the at the left side of your screen of the Google Hangout. There'll be a Q&A button. You can put your questions there.
And I saw someone had mentioned Jamaica. I think I'm guessing this is in terms of LGBT violence, recorded violence in some of these countries, and some of the American evangelists who are also going into the Caribbean to spread their hate, because they've also gone to Jamaica and Belize as well. And what HRC is doing right now, they're running a research project where they're calling out these American evangelists, and I keep saying that America needs to contain its crazy people. They should not come into our countries and bring their hate and homophobia.
And at the same time, a lot of people think that Americans or the West is bringing homosexuality to our countries. I would really like to reiterate that a lot of our countries, our African countries, our Asian countries, have always had a lot of respect for everyone, irrespective of their gender identity or sexual orientation, and it's well documented. It is the Commonwealth, it is the colonizers from, like, the Spanish, the British, who came here and taught us the concept of this is bad, this is wrong, and that you people are all wrong about this thing, and made us into complete prudes. And it happened so long ago that we've completely forgotten our own rich cultural history of acceptance and understanding and welcoming everyone. And we think that to be homophobic, to be transphobic, is our traditional value, which it is not.
Yeah, and a lot of the colonial people left their laws in our countries. And unfortunately, we are still jealously holding on to those colonial laws instead of moving forward and getting our own.
And that was a great thing. Homophobia is not, well, homosexuality is not un-African, homophobia is.
Yeah.
Or un-Asian. Any more questions? You can type it into the group chat, or you can post a separate question if you want to.
I guess not.
Give it like 30 seconds
Yeah,
or so, because
I'll
there is
give.
a delay.
Yeah, sure.
So whilst we wait for anyone who has questions, I know that a lot of people have made some arguments about cultural and religious and social contexts as concerns LGBT issues. And whilst the world is diverse, people have totally different beliefs. If we're talking about religion, say in Africa or in India, the Bible came to Africa with a white man as well. But this is a discussion for another day. But
yeah,
anyway,
it's a long discussion.
even if you look at what religious beliefs teach us, they teach us love, they teach us tolerance. Nowhere, do we say that you can segregate somebody or violate somebody because of their religious beliefs, because then they're just as diverse. Some people are Muslims, some people are Christians, some people are atheists. They don't even subscribe to any religion. Some people Hebrew. So there's really no one box where we can talk about religion and LGBT issues, as just that one entity without looking at the entire spectrum. And then political scapegoating. This is something that is happening in a lot of the countries. For example, in Malaysia, the key opposition leader is serving a jail term because then the government accused him of sodomy. And these are some of the issues that are used by oppressive governments that do not want dissidents, that they do not want opposition.
So if you're opposing, we'll put a case of sodomy on you because the law says that is wrong. And well, basically, let's see how controversial we can make it.
Yeah.
Like literally, in the same thing with Uganda.
If you look at Uganda, they passed the law because the current president is up for re-election in 2016, and right after he passed the bill, then he was given free will to run for presidency for life. So that there's no democracy at all. The same thing happened to Nigeria as well.
And Russia.
And Russia as well. Nigeria, I think the elections are up next year or so. So we are seeing a lot of politicians using LGBT issues as a scapegoating issue. And sometimes when the governments are doing so badly, the economy is doing so badly, citizens are starting to become agitated, and politicians decide, oh, you know what, the biggest problem in the country is gay people. It's not the economy, it's not the bad roads, it's not the youth who do not have jobs, but the biggest problem in the country is gay people.
So I don't see any more questions coming up. You can email us directly.
There's one?
There's one more? Okay.
From Laura.
Oh, I just got it. Yeah, there you go. Any suggestion on how to approach LGBT issues in our daily life, or even our professional one, for example? How can we connect women's issues with LGBT? Nice websites or places. Yes. First of all, LGBTQ, the whole spectrum, does not exclude women. There are lots of women who are part of that too. And it's been done really brilliantly by a lot of feminist organizations, which is to, well, especially in a lot of countries which criminalize LGBT people, is to take it from a women's rights perspective. So that's another way that people can tie it in, is to use a youth rights perspective or a women's rights perspective or a freedom of expression perspective in a country that has LGBT hostile laws. That's the first thing. How to approach it in your daily life, it is something that I recommend to everyone. Talk about it. Like, talk about it to your family, talk about it to people who you think might want to talk about it, especially to people who you think might not want to talk about it. And that is, like, the best way that you can do it is to start engaging, because the minute you start talking about it, there will be people who listen. one of the things that I do with my group back home is to tell them to talk about such issues loudly on the metro, because like whatever you talk about, it's like everyone's business. They're just going to be there and they're going to listen on, so at least they're getting some information.
I think I can also add, Mara, that LGBT gay people, it's not our first identity. So when I come to talk to you, I will not come to talk to you and tell you, oh, you know what, I am a lesbian, I cannot find a job. I will come talk to you and tell you, I have these qualifications, I need a job, and my sexuality comes way later. But then we find that a lot of the discussion goes, oh, you're gay, so I cannot employ you because you're gay. And talking about tying in LGBT issues and women's rights, I am a woman first. I am a citizen of my country, so the country has a responsibility to me. I am a woman. Depending on how the country views women issues and women's rights, and so I can talk to you first as a woman, and then add on the what are they called? The oppressions that come with being a woman. Talk about issues of forced marriage. Talk about issues of violence against women. So when you have a case of violence against a woman, you're not saying violence against a woman who's gay, but then talk about it as, you know, someone was targeted first because they're a woman, and then secondly because they belong to a minority group. Talk about health rights issues of women. Talk about sexual reproductive health rights issues of women. Talk about women in power. Talk about involvement in social political spheres as well as women, and then you can tie this in towards you know, people discriminating against first a woman and then because of how she identifies or not.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't really find a guide that will tell you this is how you deal with these issues. This is why we're asking for straight alliances. So in your organization, then this would be something that you can begin yourself. Start talking about it in your organization, because then, you know, you create that space just for you. Yeah.
Any more questions? We answer everything?
Well, I hope so.
I hope so. If you have any further questions, you know our email addresses. It's lushar.malik@atlascore.org and jane.tariqua@atlascore.org. Or you can tweet to us or write to us on Facebook. We'd be more than happy to not only answer questions but also meet in person. If you have like a question that you feel that, you know, you cannot directly like even send by mail, feel free to talk to us. We're there to help you understand everything, as well as there to tell you whatever you need to know.
Yeah, and there was a great comment there that these issues should be in all agendas: youth, faith, economic empowerment. It's just how.
I don't know where it went. I didn't do anything. It's here. See.
Okay, it says I'm not saying it's not. Okay, these issues should be in all agendas: youth, faith, economic empowerment. It's just how to connect. Make sure when implementing a project with the youth groups, we make sure to include equal rights and human rights as well. That's a very good point.
Number one.
Yeah.
Okay. And thank you, Dan, for the Darren for the feedback. You guys have a good day.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.